Former President Barack Obama will join Joe Biden for a fundraiser next Tuesday. Biden announced the virtual grassroots fundraiser on Twitter yesterday, shortly after his campaign announced that it and associated Democratic groups raised $81 million last month, Biden's strongest ever month of fundraising this cycle. The fundraiser will mark the first time that Biden and Obama have appeared on screen together since the former president endorsed Biden back in April. Meanwhile, the DNC is out this morning with a new ad entitled Descent, marking the 5-year anniversary of Donald Trump's descent down the escalator to begin his presidential candidacy.
5 years ago, Donald Trump descended to the basement of Trump Tower. For the last 5 years, he's brought America down with him, attacking health care for patients with pre-existing conditions, giving massive tax cuts to billionaires, not working families, praising white supremacists, stoking racial division, a White House in chaos, losing 300,000 jobs in a failed trade war with China, locking children in cages. He ignored science on coronavirus and misled the American people, stating it would miraculously go away. It didn't. Now, over 100,000 dead Americans, 20 million jobs destroyed, recession.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
He shredded our alliances and turned our military on American citizens. You have the power to end the descent of our nation, to choose justice, unity, leadership, because we can't afford 4 more years of Trump.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Heidi Przybyla, who first obtained that ad. What's the strategy behind it, beyond basically trying to describe this entire presidency as a descent?
It really is the beginning, Mika, of a 5-week campaign that sets off the entire general election offensive here. This is just the first ad. There will be a series to follow this. And as you saw from the very beginning of that ad, they are tying this, which is today, the 5-year anniversary of Trump's descent down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, to what they say is really the decline of America. And they hit him on so many issues in that ad, Mika, but I'm told by the DNC that in the coming week, the general election strategy preview will really unfold to show that there will be a very heavy focus on China. Starting next week, the DNC will be rolling out additional ads showing that the president's negotiating style and his dealings with China have really been to the detriment of the American people, focused in that first week on the 300,000 jobs they say have been lost. But then following after that, in terms of how the president has dealt with China on coronavirus, ignoring the coronavirus threat for so many weeks as he tried to negotiate that trade deal, downplaying the threat. One thing that's significant here as well is that this is really going to mark a big change from 2016. Later today, I'm told by the DNC that Elizabeth Warren will be joining DNC Chair Tom Perez to kick off this entire initiative. And that is really going to be a show of unity between the progressive wing and the more moderate wings of the Democratic Party, which is a big change from 2016 when you had all of that turmoil between the Sanders campaign and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And then there's going to be a 5-week battleground tour by Tom Perez, as well as Elizabeth Warren, and it'll bring in other party heavyweights, for instance, Ballard, who will be teaming up in Florida next week. Mika?
Willie.
Heidi, it's Willie. We talked way back when, before the pandemic, about how unusually quickly the Democratic Party got behind Joe Biden as candidates dropped out of the race. Most prominently, of course, Bernie Sanders. They hopped in and supported Joe Biden. They didn't have this long, protracted fight like we had in 2016. As you point out, that continues with the DNC. I think the Clinton campaign, it's fair to say, had a strained relationship with the DNC on many levels. Doesn't appear to be that way this time around.
No, and I'm told also that we can probably expect there to be a very strong presence by the DNC as opposed to 2016 in terms of the offensive strategy. Here you see the Biden campaign doing a lot of work in terms of proactively disputing narratives put out by the Trump campaign. But in terms of going on the offense, if you look at what's happening here with this ad, as well as some of the outside super PACs like Priorities USA, the campaign does seem okay, leaving a lot of this offensive role to the DNC. They have some heavyweights like Stephanie Cutter, Adrian Watson, who is the DNC courtroom director, who have been working on this initiative, collecting all of this information, creating a big database that they will be using to hit Trump basically on a lot of the promises that he made in his 2016 campaign as he returns to those areas to hit him on the trade issue, on health care, and very much so on coronavirus. But again, I want to also stress that this China narrative is going to cut really deep just because of how prominent that issue was by the president, the case that he made about being tough on China, when in fact, when you look at the jobs issue, when you look at coronavirus, Democrats argue it's been arguably one of his biggest weaknesses, that and his ability to negotiate as a businessman, which was seen as such a strength by so many of his supporters in 2016, Willie.
Heidi, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for bringing that. Fascinating. You know, Jon Meacham, let's just strip this down to its bare essence, which I always tell people when they come to me saying they want to run. I'm like, what's your bumper sticker? That's where you start and then you expand out. Well, the bumper sticker here is Trump is a bad president. Whereas in 2016, the bumper sticker for Hillary Clinton was Trump is a bad guy. People in 2016 said, yeah, he is a bad guy. Maybe we need a bad guy. In fact, the 2020 Trump campaign ad is Trump is a bad guy. Maybe we need a bad guy right now. But what this Biden ad does is he shows how Trump being a bad president is impacting America. He's cutting your health care, working class Americans. He's promising to cut your health care guarantees that you had under the Affordable Care Act. He's giving tax cuts not to you, not to the small business owners that employ you, but to billionaires that own yachts. And he bragged about it down in Mar-a-Lago. He's locking children in cages. Good luck explaining that to evangelicals. He's got a failed trade war, that's cost billions of dollars and thousands of jobs. 100,000 Americans are dead because he couldn't manage the pandemic because of his magical thinking. Tens of millions of jobs are lost because he didn't act quickly enough on the pandemic. We now have a recession. I mean, and then, of course, Donald Trump saying, I bear no responsibility. They actually connect Donald Trump's personality and Donald Trump's job performance to people's lives. This is what the Hillary Clinton campaign didn't do, what they couldn't do in 2016 because he was running as a challenger. This is exactly what the Biden campaign's doing right now.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, American politics in our era can be traced to Tuesday, October 28th, 1980, when Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter at last met in debate in Cleveland. And we all remember the great line, there you go again, which was actually delivered as Carter was telling the truth about Reagan's opposition to Medicare in the 1960s. But the summary statement, and it was after that debate that the numbers moved and the Reagan era was to begin, was, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And he said, is it easier for you to go buy things in stores than it was 4 years ago? That is part of the Biden message. But even more than Reagan, I think that Biden is asking that question economically, but also culturally. Are we better off as a broad nation than we were 4 years ago? Are we more or less divided? Are things more or less sulfurous? Is our partisanship more or less reflexive as opposed to reflective, which is what partisanship should be? And it's a pretty straightforward question. The other thing about presidential politics is people always say, well, this is a referendum on the incumbent. I don't really accept that. I think that presidential politics are about choice, not a referendum. And so it's not just enough. No one ever came to the country and said, do you want Donald Trump to be president? That wasn't the question in 2016. It was, which of these two people do you want to be president? And once again, now we'll have a question, who do you want of these two people? And it seems to me that one of the strengths Biden has is he is a figure from that FDR-Reagan consensus that Trump represents a reaction and, God willing, an aberration from.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.